"He's not your brother today, Sergeant. He's your problem." That's what the recruiter whispered after saluting Cody, wearing my uniform. I'd just landed from tour, still smelling like jet fuel and sweat, when I saw him strutting through the airport with my name, my medals, my rank sewn across his chest. Then I heard it. "Sir, thank you for your service." And he nodded, smiled, took the handshake like he'd earned it. But the worst part? Mom knew. She said I should be proud Cody finally found his calling. Stealing mine. What none of them knew was that I hadn't come home alone. I had something Cody didn't. A mission log, a burner phone, and 10 days to ruin his entire plan. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is James Walker, and I'm 38 years old. After 3 tours as an Army mechanic, I finally came home to Tennessee, with nothing but my duffel and dignity intact. My younger brother Cody, always the smooth talker in the family, had drifted between jobs while I served. Our mother Angela, bless her enabling heart, kept making excuses for his schemes. I never thought he'd go this far, though. My hands still shake remembering that moment at the airport, seeing him wear my uniform like it was some Halloween costume. The sight of that recruiter's salute made my stomach turn to ice. I had fixed tanks under fire, but nothing prepared me for seeing my own name and rank stolen by my flesh and blood. But let me start from the beginning. The next morning hit me like a hangover, even though I hadn't touched a drop. I waited until Cody left for whatever he called work these days before heading over to Mom's place. His beat-up Civic was still parked in her driveway, looking about as honest as he was. The key was probably still hidden in the same spot, under the wheel well where he'd kept it since high school. Sure enough, my fingers found it right where muscle memory led them. The car's interior reeked of cheap air freshener and cigarettes. Cody never could keep anything clean. Remember how he used to organize his room by shoving everything under the bed? Some things never change. I started with the glove compartment, and that's when my world really started to tilt. VA medical documents, all addressed to James Walker. Restaurant receipts with military discounts, 15–20% off. Movie stubs, theme park passes, each one marked with veteran status. My stomach churned as I dug deeper. His phone was gone with him, but he'd left his tablet in the back seat. The screen lit up with notifications, dating apps, all under my name. Messages from women thanking Sergeant Walker for wonderful evenings. Photos of Cody in what had to be my spare uniform, posing at local bars. You know that feeling when you realize you've been shot at? That instant when your training kicks in before your brain can process the danger? This was worse. This was a bullet I couldn't dodge. I moved inside Mom's house, using my old key. Cody's room was exactly where it had always been, across from mine. The sight of those 2 doors, one covered in band stickers, the other plain, brought back memories of summer nights arguing over music volume. But this wasn't some brotherly spat anymore. His room was a shrine to identity theft. A manila envelope on his desk caught my eye. Official letterhead from Davidson Defense Solutions. My hand shook as I pulled out the contents. There was my official military photo in dress blues, the one taken right before my last deployment. Attached to a job application, contractor position, 6 figures, starting in less than 2 weeks. The front door creaked. Mom's voice called out, "Jimmy? That you up there?" "Yeah, Mom. Just looking for something. Cody should be home soon for dinner. Stay and eat with us?" My throat tightened. "Sure, Mom. I'll be down in a bit." I photographed everything with my phone before putting it all back exactly as I'd found it. Then I sat on his bed and waited. The sun was setting when I heard his car pull up. Cody bounded up the stairs like he didn't have a care in the world. His face barely registered surprise when he saw me in his room. "Hey, big brother. Doing some snooping." I held up the contractor application. Want to explain this? Come on, Jimmy. It's not a big deal. He dropped into his desk chair, that familiar smirk playing at his lips. You weren't even using your name. All those benefits just sitting there while you played soldier overseas? Playing soldier. My voice came out low and dangerous. I served my country, earned every stripe. And you're stealing it all for what? Bar discounts and dates? And a real future? He leaned forward. That contractor job? It's legitimate work. Good money. The kind of opportunity you always said I needed. It's fraud, Cody. Federal fraud. Yeah? His smirk widened. And if you report it, who do you think they'll believe? The unstable vet who put his little brother up to it for a cut of the money? Or the reformed screw-up who's finally making something of himself? The blood rushed in my ears. What are you saying? I'm saying be smart, Jimmy. You try to burn me, I'll make sure you go down too. Mom's already convinced I'm turning my life around. Who's she gonna back? I stood up so fast the bed creaked. My fists clenched at my sides, combat training warring with family ties. You sorry son of a... Boys? Mom's voice floated up. Dinner's ready? Cody stood, straightening his collar. Coming, Mom. He turned back to me. Think it over, brother. Sometimes the smart play is just letting things work out how they're meant to. I watched him bounce down the stairs, calling out sweet nothings to our mother. The manila envelope sat on his desk, mocking me. Everything I'd built, everything I'd earned. He was taking it all with a smile and a shrug. My boots felt like lead as I walked out of that house, leaving Mom's calls behind me. The evening air hit my face, but I barely felt it. 3 tours in combat zones, and my own brother had just done what no enemy ever could. He'd left me completely and utterly cornered. The next morning, I drove to the base with my heart in my throat. 20 years of service, and I'd never felt like such an imposter approaching those gates. The guard's eyes narrowed at my ID, like he was seeing double. Maybe he was. One moment, sir. He made a call, then waved me through with a hesitation I'd never seen before. Colonel Matthews's office hadn't changed. Same worn leather chair, same Go Army coffee mug, same photos of tanks lined up on desert horizons. The familiar smell of coffee and gun oil should have been comforting. It wasn't. Walker, Matthews gestured to the chair across his desk. What brings you by? I'd rehearsed this a dozen times. Sir, I need to discuss something off the record. It's about my brother. He leaned back, hands folded. Your brother? The civilian? Not so civilian anymore, apparently. I explained what I'd found. The uniform, the ID, the contractor application. Matthews's face stayed neutral, but his fingers drummed steadily on his desk. Serious allegations. He turned to his computer. Let me pull up your file. The clicking of his keyboard felt like timestamps on my career. His frown deepened with each stroke. That's odd. More clicking. System shows you're already logged into the base network. Active duty status, but also deployed? He squinted at the screen. Your deployment records aren't syncing properly. My stomach dropped. Sir, I can explain. Can you? His tone had shifted. The warmth was gone. Because right now I'm seeing multiple conflicting entries for James Walker. One version's home, another never left. Your security credentials are throwing flags left and right. Colonel, you know me. 15 years under your command. And in those 15 years, you never mentioned a brother who could access our systems. He leaned forward. Do you have any idea how serious this is? We're talking about potential breach of classified information. Sir, I'm the real James Walker. I can prove it. Can you? Because right now, the digital trail says otherwise. He tapped his screen. Your brother's been accessing base facilities for months. Clean entries, proper protocols. Meanwhile, your own access codes are showing as duplicates. The room felt smaller by the second. Every commendation on his wall seemed to stare down at me, questioning my right to be there. "I understand how this looks," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But Cody's the fraud. He's stolen my identity, my uniform. Or you gave him access." Matthews's words hit like shrapnel. Maybe this contractor deal was a family business venture that went south? "Colonel, you can't believe that." "What I believe doesn't matter. What matters is what I can verify." He turned the screen around. Red flags littered my service record. "Your deployment history's scrambled. Security clearance is throwing duplicate session errors. Hell, according to this, you're simultaneously in 3 different locations." I stood up, desperate to see the screen. The data was a mess. Login attempts, security protocols, duty stations all jumbled together. Cody hadn't just stolen my name, he'd corrupted my entire digital existence. "Take some time, Walker." Matthew's voice was carefully neutral now. "Sort this out through proper channels." But until then, he didn't need to finish. I was toxic, a security risk. That night, I sat in my truck with my laptop, trying every backdoor I knew into the base systems. Each attempt hit the same wall. Error. Duplicate session detected. Somewhere out there, another James Walker was living my life, using my credentials, wearing my name like a borrowed coat. The base lights glowed in the distance, warm and familiar. But for the first time in my career, they felt like they belonged to someone else. Cody hadn't just stolen my identity. He'd made me disappear, made me a ghost in my own uniform. I closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the stars through my windshield. The same stars I'd watched over Baghdad, over Kandahar, over a dozen forgotten outposts where I'd fixed engines and patched armor and never once questioned who I was. Now, the system that had been my home for 20 years couldn't even recognize my face. And the worst part? Nobody seemed in a hurry to believe a ghost. I needed to know what Cody was up to, so I tailed him the next morning. Wasn't hard to spot him in my pressed uniform, strutting down Main Street like he owned it. Remember when we were kids, and he'd always borrow my toys without asking? Same damn swagger. Just traded up from Hot Wheels to military credentials. He walked into the Daily Grind, one of those fancy coffee shops where people pretend to work on laptops all day. Through the window, I watched him settle at a corner table, adjusting my name badge like he was straightening a tie. 5 minutes later, a woman in a sharp business suit joined him. Her handshake was crisp, professional, the kind of person who could make or break careers. I slipped inside, grabbed a coffee, and found a spot where I could hear them without being obvious. The smell of roasted beans and pastries filled the air, but my stomach was too knotted to enjoy any of it. "Sergeant Walker," she said, all warm smiles and firm handshakes. "I can't tell you how impressed everyone was with your application. 20 years of mechanical expertise, 3 tours." She checked her tablet. "Your commanding officer's recommendation was particularly glowing." My hands tightened around my cup. That recommendation, had he forged it? Hacked it? Or had the system's confusion somehow worked in his favor? "Just doing my duty, ma'am." Cody's voice had that practiced humility I'd heard 1,000 times from real soldiers. He'd always been good at reading people, figuring out exactly what they wanted to hear. Looking forward to bringing those skills to the private sector. "Well, with your background, you'll be perfect for this position. The starting salary is $145,000, with full benefits and relocation assistance if needed." She tapped her screen. "We can start the onboarding process next Monday. That's 10 days from now. Does that work with your current commitments?" "Yes, ma'am. My final duties wrap up this week." I nearly crushed my cup. Final duties? The only thing wrapping up was his con job, and he was about to parlay my stolen identity into a 6-figure paycheck. They chatted for another 20 minutes. Technical details, paperwork requirements, security clearance transfers. Every word twisted the knife deeper. He had answers for everything, delivered with just the right mix of confidence and respect. When they stood to leave, The HR rep actually thanked him for his service. I watched him walk her to her car, still playing the perfect soldier right up until she drove away. Only then did his face change, that familiar smirk returning as he checked his reflection in a store window. I couldn't take it anymore. I drove straight to Mom's house, rehearsing what I'd say. She'd always been the voice of reason when we were growing up. Surely she'd understand the magnitude of what Cody was doing. The kitchen smelled like chocolate chip cookies, her go-to stress baking recipe. She was pulling a batch from the oven when I walked in. "Mom, we need to talk about Cody." She set down the baking sheet harder than necessary. "James, don't start." "Don't start? He's committing fraud, identity theft. He's about to take a defense contract under my name." "And what's wrong with that?" She turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Defiance. He's finally doing something with his life. Making real money? Building a career? Using my name. The words exploded out of me. My service record, my reputation. Which you weren't even using. She threw up her hands. You were overseas, and he needed a chance. It was harmless at first. Just a few discounts. Some recognition. The room spun. You knew? This whole time? Of course I knew. She wouldn't meet my eyes now. He told me months ago. Said you wouldn't mind, since you were deployed anyway. And look how well he's doing. A real job, benefits. A real job? My voice cracked. Built on lies? On stealing my identity? Don't be dramatic, James. You can share a little success. You've always been the responsible one. Why not help your brother for once? I staggered back like she'd slapped me. 20 years of service, and my own mother thought it was something that could just be borrowed, like a cup of sugar or a lawn mower. That night, I couldn't face going home. I drove to the Armory parking lot and killed the engine. Through the chain-link fence, I watched soldiers coming and going, changing shifts, heading to Chow, living the life I'd built. My life. The life Cody was wearing like a Halloween costume. I reclined my seat, using my jacket as a pillow. The familiar sounds of the bass drifted through my open window. Boots on pavement, distant radio chatter, the occasional rumble of a Humvee. Everything that had meant home for 2 decades. But now, I was just another civilian in a pickup truck, watching my whole life being lived by someone else. The first hints of sunrise were just starting to streak across the Armory parking lot when I pulled out my green logbook. You know the kind. Standard issue, waterproof pages, meant for maintenance records. But I'd always used mine for more. Names, numbers, details that might matter someday. Call it a habit from too many years of watching equipment failures cascade into disasters. My hand shook slightly as I flipped through the worn pages. The memories hit me with each turn. Sand-stained entries from Kandahar, coffee rings from late-night repairs, notes scribbled during briefings. Then I found it. Chief Warrant Officer Brian Timmons. We'd served together on my second tour, keeping a motor pool running when half our parts were missing and the other half were wrong. I glanced at my watch. 0545. Early. But not too early for a man like Timmons. He answered on the second ring. Walker! His voice was sharp, alert. Some guys never lose that military edge. Been a minute. You stateside? That's actually what I need to talk about, Chief. I took a deep breath. Got time for coffee. 30 minutes later, I was sitting across from him at the kind of diner that serves breakfast 24/7. And doesn't judge men who look like they slept in their trucks. Timmons hadn't changed much, still had that squared-away buzz cut, still carried himself like he was perpetually ready for inspection. Start from the top, he said, stirring his coffee with military precision. Leave nothing out. So I did. Laid it all out. The homecoming, the stolen identity, the contractor job, my mother's betrayal. Timmons listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, He set down his cup with the careful deliberation of a man containing serious anger. Your own brother. It wasn't a question. Using your service record to land a defense contract. Yeah. I stared into my cooling coffee. And if I try to stop him, he'll claim you were complicit. Timmons nodded grimly, making you the fall guy either way. Got 10 days before his onboarding starts. After that, I let the sentence hang. After that, he's in the system, inside the wire. Timmons's jaw tightened. With access to sensitive contracts, using your credentials, the weight of it settled over our table. This wasn't just about my name anymore. It was about security, about the integrity of the entire system we'd spent our careers protecting. I need proof, I said. Concrete evidence that he's been impersonating me. Something that can't be explained away. Timmons leaned forward, lowering his voice. Base security keeps visitor logs, camera footage at every gate. If he's been accessing the facility under your name, there'd be timestamps, photos, documentation. Exactly. He pulled out his phone, checking something. I've still got systems access. Can pull gate records, cross-reference them with your actual deployment dates. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. You'd do that? Brother, this isn't just about you anymore. Man uses a stolen service record to infiltrate a defense contractor. He shook his head. That's a security breach waiting to happen. 10 days, you said? I nodded. Then that's our timeline. He grabbed a napkin, started writing. I'll get you the security logs. You focus on documenting every instance of fraud. VA benefits, discounts, anything with a paper trail. We build the case right. We can take it straight to JAG. And if he realizes we're building a case, then we need a backup plan. Timmons tapped his pen thoughtfully. Something to make him slip up. Get him on record, claiming to be you. The pieces were starting to come together. After days of feeling powerless, I finally had a direction. A mission. One more thing, Timmons said, his voice deadly serious. You're sleeping in your truck? Just temporary. He slid a key across the table. Got a spare room, off-base housing, private entrance. Use it until this is done. I started to protest, but he cut me off. Can't run an op from a parking lot, Walker. Take the damn key. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my palm. More than just a key. It was a foothold, a base of operations. The first step in reclaiming what was mine. 10 days, I said. Timmons nodded. 10 days. Let's get to work. The next 2 days felt like being back in the field, running on coffee, tracking patterns, living by the clock. Only this time, my target was my own brother. Timmons had converted his spare room into our command center. Maps, printouts, and timelines covered one wall. He'd even dragged in an extra monitor so we could review security footage side by side. The military precision of it all felt familiar, grounding. Almost made me forget I was hunting my own blood. Got another hit, Timmons called out, pausing a frame. Gate Charlie, 14:30 hours, 3 weeks ago. I leaned in. There was Cody, clean-shaven in my uniform, flashing my ID at the guard. The timestamp burned in my gut. I'd been knee-deep in maintenance checks in Kandahar that day. Add it to the list, I said, marking another red dot on our timeline. That's what, number 7? 8. Timmons's fingers flew across his keyboard. But here's where it gets interesting. Cross-referenced with your deployment records. There's no matching entry for your actual location that day. System shows a blank. The coffee I'd been drinking turned sour in my stomach. How's that possible? Someone's been tampering with the database, deleting entries, creating gaps. He swiveled to face me. Your brother's covering his tracks, but he's doing it wrong. Military records don't just disappear, they get archived. Every deletion leaves a fingerprint. I remembered those long nights in the motor pool, logging every bolt and bearing we replaced. The military runs on documentation. Nothing vanishes completely. Show me the pattern, I said, pulling up a chair. For the next few hours, we dug deeper. Each deleted record pointed to another discrepancy. Cody had been thorough, but he didn't understand the system like we did. He'd erased primary logs but missed the backups, cleared gate records but forgot about secondary checkpoints. Then we hit the wall. Camera feeds dead for the HR meeting. Timmons growled, replaying the empty footage. Whole hours missing. I rubbed my eyes, fighting exhaustion. He's getting better at this. Maybe. Timmons pulled up a map. But he forgot something. Base cameras might be down, but city traffic cams. He pointed to an intersection. Recruiter's office is right there. External coverage. That sparked something. I've got a buddy in traffic control. Might be able to pull those feeds. Do it. Timmons checked his watch. Meanwhile, we need eyes on his next move. When's his follow-up meeting? Tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. Then we start our own surveillance. Document everything. He tossed me a small camera. Military grade. Good range, clear audio. I caught it, feeling its familiar weight. How many times had I used something similar in the field? I'll set up early, catch him arriving. We worked through the night, piecing together what we had. 8 confirmed instances of base access under my name. 3 deleted deployment records. A dozen civilian businesses where he'd used my military ID for discounts. Each piece was damning, but we needed more. Around dawn, my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Pre-clearance badges approved for James Walker. Onboarding access granted. They've cleared him, I said, showing Timmons. He's got building access now. Timmons's expression hardened. How long until full onboarding? 8 days. The number felt like a noose tightening. Once he's in their system, we can't let it get that far. Timmons pulled up the building schematics. Tomorrow's meeting is our best shot. Get there early, find a good vantage point. We need clear footage of him claiming to be you. I nodded, studying the layout. There's a coffee shop across the street. Perfect sightlines. Good. I'll keep digging on the technical side. He pointed to a gap in our timeline. These missing records, there's got to be a backup somewhere. No one's that thorough their first time. The sun was rising now, painting the room in cold morning light. In a few hours, Cody would walk into that building wearing my name like a borrowed suit. But this time, we'd be ready. I packed the camera, checked its battery, ran through the mental checklist that had kept me alive overseas. I should get moving. Want to scout the location before he shows. Timmons caught my arm. Walker. Remember, evidence only. No confrontation. I know. I managed a tired smile. Learned that lesson in Kandahar, remember? Yeah. Well, this is different. This is family. His grip tightened slightly. Makes people do stupid things. He was right. Family did make things messy. But that's exactly why I couldn't afford to slip up now. 8 days left, and the clock was running. I waited until 2 a.m. to make the call. The burner phone felt strange in my hand, lighter than my regular cell, cheaper plastic. But it would do the job. Timmons had helped me craft the script, making sure every detail matched what a real coordinator would say. We'd rehearsed it twice, tweaking my tone until it was perfect. Professional, slightly rushed, maybe even a touch apologetic for calling so late. The number rang 3 times before Cody picked up, his voice groggy. Hello? Good evening? Is this Sergeant James Walker? I kept my voice higher than usual, adding just a hint of nasally bureaucrat. This is Daniel Matthews from Personnel Coordination. Sorry for the late call. We're processing your onboarding paperwork and found a few discrepancies we need to clear up immediately. There was a rustling sound. Cody sitting up in bed, probably. Oh, yes, sir. This is Sergeant Walker. My jaw clenched at hearing him say it. The recording software on the burner phone blinked steadily, capturing every word. Excellent. Just need to verify a few things for our records. I shuffled some papers near the phone for effect. You're accepting the position as outlined in the contractor agreement dated last Thursday, correct? Yes, that's right. And you're the James Walker who served 3 tours, currently holding the rank of sergeant? That's correct. No hesitation, not even a hint of shame. Perfect. And your service number? He rattled off my number without missing a digit. The same number I'd earned, the one sewn into every uniform, stamped on every document of my military life. Hearing him recite it made my stomach turn. Wonderful. Thank you, Sergeant Walker. We'll process your clearance first thing tomorrow. Have a good night. I ended the call and sat there in my truck, staring at the phone's dim screen. The recording was saved, clear as day, every damning word. Next to me, Timmons nodded slowly. That's the nail in the coffin, he said. Clean confession, service number and all. I pulled out my laptop and added the audio file to our evidence package. The brief was massive now. Gate logs showing Cody's unauthorized base access, time-stamped photos of him in uniform, records of deleted files, traffic cam footage, witness statements from base personnel, and now this, his own voice sealing the deal. Once we send this, Timmons said, there's no taking it back. JAG office doesn't play around with identity theft. Neither does the contractor's security team. He paused, watching me. Your call, James. I stared at the send button. The cursor hovered there, blinking like a warning light. Part of me remembered teaching Cody to ride a bike, helping him with math homework, covering for him when he stayed out late. But that was a lifetime ago. Before he decided my name was just another thing he could borrow. My mother's words echoed, he's finally doing something with his life. Yeah, my life. The clock on my laptop clicked over to midnight. Decision time. He had choices, I said, more to myself than Timmons. Could have enlisted himself. Could have earned his own way. Hell, could have just asked me for help. Instead, he stole your identity, Timmons finished. Your service. Your reputation. I thought about sleeping in my truck, locked out of my own records, about the looks from my CO, the doubts creeping into my service history, about Cody walking into that defense firm, wearing my name like a cheap suit, ready to compromise everything I'd built. The cursor kept blinking. Do it, Timmons said quietly, before you talk yourself out of it. I took a deep breath, remembering something my first sergeant told me. Hesitation kills. In combat, in maintenance, in life. You make the call and live with it. I clicked send. The progress bar filled slowly, first to the contractor's security office, then to the Judge Advocate General, copies to base command and the federal investigators. By 12:01, it was done. Timmons clasped my shoulder. You did the right thing. Yeah. I watched the confirmation emails pop up one by one. Doesn't feel great, though. It's not supposed to. That's what makes you different from him. The next 48 hours crawled by like a wounded soldier. I kept checking my phone, refreshing news sites, waiting for the hammer to drop. You ever watch one of those controlled demolitions where they set the charges and everyone just stands there, counting down? That's what it felt like. I was parked outside the defense contractor's building when it happened. Their security team moved fast, professional, quiet, no drama. Just 2 guys in suits walking Cody out through the side entrance. He wasn't wearing my uniform anymore. His shoulders were hunched. That trademark smirk finally wiped clean off his face. They put him in a dark SUV and drove off. I watched through my windshield, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Didn't feel like victory. Didn't feel like much of anything. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Is this the real James Walker? A woman's voice, crisp and formal. Had to be HR. Yes, ma'am. Sergeant James Walker. Service number. We have your documentation now, she cut in. The real documentation. I wanted to personally apologize for this situation. We take security clearance very seriously, and the fact that someone attempted to… Well, the proper authorities have been notified. I closed my eyes. Appreciate the call. Your brother… She hesitated. He was very convincing. The references, the interviews, everything seemed perfect. He's had practice, I said, and ended the call. Around 2 that afternoon, my phone exploded. Messages, notifications, news alerts. There it was. Cody's mugshot plastered across the local news website. Identity theft scheme exposed. Local man charged with impersonating military brother. They got a good picture of him. Deer in the headlights. That artificial confidence finally stripped away. The article mentioned federal charges, possible prison time. Words like fraud and stolen valor jumped out at me. Remember those old Polaroid cameras? How the image would slowly develop right in front of you? That's how it felt watching his face spread across social media. Every share, every comment, making it more real, more permanent. Mom called 6 times, left voicemails that got progressively more tearful. How could you do this to him? Then, please, he's your brother. And finally, just sobbing. I let them pile up, unheard. I drove aimlessly for a while, muscle memory taking me past the base. There was activity near the parade ground. Chairs being set up, a podium, flags snapping in the wind. The quarterly re-enlistment ceremony. I'd forgotten all about it. A familiar stocky figure stood at the edge of the setup. Timmons. He was holding a garment bag, and even from the car I could see the sharp lines of dress blues inside. My dress blues. The real ones. I pulled over, killed the engine. For a long moment, I just sat there watching the preparations. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard Cody's voice. What's the big deal? You weren't here. But I had been here. Every day, every tour, every midnight maintenance call. I'd earned this uniform one sweat-stained, grease-covered day at a time. Timmons spotted me and lifted the garment bag slightly. An invitation. A choice. I got out of the truck, boots crunching on gravel. The wind carried the sound of the color guard practicing, metal clips clicking against flagpoles. Timmons didn't say anything as I approached, just held out the uniform. The fabric felt different now. Heavier. Like the weight of everything that had happened was sewn into it. I changed right there behind my truck. Movements automatic from years of practice. Each button, each crease, had to be perfect. This wasn't about Cody anymore. This was about the name on the uniform. My name. Ready? Timmons asked, checking my ribbons with a critical eye. I nodded, squaring my shoulders. The podium waited ahead, surrounded by rows of empty chairs that would soon hold fellow soldiers, brothers and sisters who'd earned their place, who understood what it meant to serve. Let's go, I said, and took the first step forward. The gravel path crunched under our boots as we walked toward the ceremony setup. My eyes stayed fixed ahead, focused on the flag rippling against the autumn sky. Behind me, I could hear more vehicles arriving, chairs scraping as they were arranged in perfect rows, but I didn't turn around. Not once. The podium loomed closer with each step. Rows of familiar faces filled the chairs. Soldiers I'd served with, commanded, learned from. Some nodded as I passed. Others just watched, probably wondering about the headlines they'd seen. The morning sun caught on brass buttons and metal pins, creating little flashes of light across the gathering. I took my place in line with the other recipients, spine straight, chin level. The ceremony began with the usual formalities, presentations, speeches, the comfortable rhythm of military procedure. But my mind kept drifting back through the past weeks. The airport, the recruiter's salute meant for someone else, sleeping in my truck. Each memory felt distant now, like looking through old photographs. When they called my name, my real name, the sound echoed differently than it had in all those fake introductions Cody had made. Sergeant James Walker. Step forward. I moved with measured steps, the weight of my dress blues both familiar and strange. Colonel Matthews stood waiting, the commendation certificate crisp in his hands. Behind him, Timmons wore the hint of a smile, The kind that says, "I told you so," without needing words. "For exemplary service," Matthews read, his voice carrying across the parade ground, "and dedication to duty above and beyond." The rest blurred together, not because it wasn't important, but because I was caught in the moment. The sun warm on my shoulders, the slight breeze tugging at the flags, the solid ground beneath my boots. The applause that followed felt distant, like it was happening in another room. I shook hands, accepted congratulations, played my part. But my mind kept circling back to all the quiet battles that had led here. The late nights piecing together evidence, the painful conversations, the choice to pull the trigger on that final report. None of these people knew about those fights, the ones without uniforms or medals. After the ceremony, I headed for the locker room. The familiar smell of metal and shoe polish wrapped around me as I stepped inside. My fingers traced the nameplate on my locker. J. Walker. Simple. Clean. True. Heavy footsteps announced Timmons before he spoke. He appeared in the mirror's reflection, that same half-smile still in place. "Told you," he said, dropping a solid hand on my shoulder. "Legacy over lies." I nodded, carefully removing my jacket. Each button required attention, respect. The fabric held stories that Cody could never understand. Desert sand, engine grease, long nights under convoy trucks. I folded it with precision, smoothing every wrinkle. "Thanks," I said finally, meaning more than just today. "For everything." "Didn't do much," Timmons replied, which we both knew wasn't true. "Just helped the right man reclaim what was his." The rest of my uniform came off piece by piece, each item folded, each crease aligned. Some guys rush through this part, eager to get back to civilian clothes. But today, I took my time. This wasn't just changing clothes, it was marking the end of something. A battle won, maybe, but also a chapter closing. When I finally pulled on my regular shirt and jeans, something felt different. Not wrong, just new. Like putting on clothes that had shrunk slightly in the wash. They still fit, but the feeling had changed. Timmons waited while I gathered my things, neither of us feeling the need to fill the silence. That's one thing the service teaches you. Sometimes quiet says more than words. I shouldered my bag, taking one last look around the locker room. How many times had I changed here, rushing to make formation or dragging myself in after a long shift? Now I stood in the same spot. Everything different, but the walls themselves. "Ready?" Timmons asked. I nodded, and we headed for the exit. The afternoon sun hit my face as we stepped outside, bright enough to make me squint. Somewhere out there, a civilian life waited for me to figure it out. New routines, new challenges, new ways to define myself beyond the uniform I'd just carefully packed away. The day felt wide open, full of questions I didn't have answers for yet. But for now, standing in that sunlight, I let myself feel the weight of the commendation in my bag, the weight of my name reclaimed, the weight of honor earned twice over. The contractor's office sat in one of those glass and steel buildings that always made me feel like I needed better shoes. I'd been in plenty of high-stakes situations before, but walking through those polished doors hit different. Maybe because this time the battlefield was carpeted and came with a receptionist. "Mr. Walker?" The HR rep, Sandra Mitchell, according to the email, stood up from behind her desk. "Thank you for coming in. Please, have a seat." Her office had that corporate cleanliness that reminded me of base inspection days. Everything aligned at right angles, not a paperclip out of place. The stack of forms between us looked thick enough to stop a bullet. "These are the formal statements," she said, sliding the first set toward me. "Basically confirming everything you provided about the incident." She chose that last word carefully, like stepping around broken glass. I started signing where indicated, my signature feeling stiffer than usual. Each page documented Cody's deception in black and white. The fake credentials, the stolen identity, The whole house of cards he'd tried to build using my name as the foundation. I have to say, Sandra spoke up as I worked through the stack, your military record is impressive. The real one, I mean. She pulled out another folder, thinner than the statement pile, but somehow carrying more weight. We'd like to offer you the position. My pen stopped mid-signature. What? The same role we originally discussed with, well, she cleared her throat. The qualifications match. The security clearance is valid. And frankly, your actual experience exceeds our requirements. The irony hit like a sandbag to the chest. Here was Cody's grand prize, being handed to me clean and legal. All those months of him playing dress-up. And now I could walk right into the role he'd schemed so hard to steal. I appreciate the offer, I said, setting down the pen. But I'll have to decline. Sandra blinked. Are you sure? The compensation package is substantial. And given everything that's happened, that's exactly why. I met her eyes. This job, this whole situation, it was never mine. It was his dream, his plan. Taking it now would mean living in the shadow of his fraud, even if I earned it honest. Understanding crossed her face. She nodded slowly, tucking the offer folder away. I respect that decision, Mr. Walker. Though I have to admit, it makes me even more disappointed we won't have you on board. I finished the last of the statements and stood up. We shook hands, and I headed for the door, my shoes squeaking slightly on the overwaxed floor. Just before leaving, I turned back. Thank you, I said, for making the offer. It helps knowing I could have had it. The drive home felt longer than usual, my mind churning over that choice. The money would have been good, better than good, but something in my gut had known right away. Taking that job would have meant carrying Cody's ghost with me, day after day. Sometimes the best victory is walking away clean. I pulled into my usual spot outside my apartment building and spotted something white tucked under my windshield wiper. An envelope. Mom's handwriting on the front. Inside was a letter, several pages of careful script that probably took her hours to write. But what caught my eye was the metal chain coiled at the bottom of the envelope. Cody's old dog tags, the ones he'd worn before washing out of basic training years ago. The sight of them stirred up memories, him showing them off proudly that first week, then quietly tucking them away after he quit. They were probably meant as a peace offering now, or maybe a symbol of regret. Either way, I pocketed the tags, but let the letter flutter into the nearest trash bin. Some bridges stay burned for a reason. That evening, after a shower and a cold beer, I caught myself studying my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The face looking back seemed steadier than it had in months. The uncertainty was still there. Civilian life isn't something you figure out overnight, but the ground beneath my feet felt solid again. I touched the dog tags in my pocket, feeling their edges through the fabric. They weren't a trophy or a peace treaty, just a reminder that some paths you choose not to walk, even when they're wide open, even when they promise everything you thought you wanted. The bigger question now was, what path I did want, what legacy would be truly mine, not borrowed or stolen or offered as consolation. The mirror didn't have answers, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to start looking for them. The phone buzzed while I was changing the oil in my truck. 3 weeks had passed since the commendation ceremony, and I'd settled into a routine of small repairs and longer thoughts. The number wasn't familiar, but something made me answer anyway. Sergeant Walker? The voice was young, but carried that unmistakable military clip. This is Lieutenant Rodriguez. You probably don't remember me, but... Third rotation, basic mechanics course, I cut in, wiping my hands on a shop rag. You were the one who figured out how to jury-rig that busted alternator with paracord and paper clips. His laugh crackled through the line. Holy shit, you do remember. Man, that fix got me through 2 more deployments. I smiled, thinking back to that determined kid with motor oil permanently ground into his knuckles. What can I do for you, Lieutenant? Actually, It's just Mike now. Been civilian for 8 months. There was a pause. That's kind of why I'm calling. I'm working with the Veterans Transition Program over at Fort Harrison. We're looking for consultants. Guys who've been there, done that, you know? Someone mentioned you were back stateside. My wrench slipped, clanging against the concrete. Fort Harrison. The same base where this whole mess with Cody started. Where that recruiter had saluted the wrong walker. Mostly mentoring sessions, some hands-on training, teaching them how to translate military skills into civilian careers. Mike's voice grew earnest. Look, I know it's not exactly high-profile work, but these kids need someone who gets it. Someone real. That last word hit home. Real. Not a borrowed uniform or a stolen name, just honest experience, freely given. What's the timeline? I asked, already knowing I'd say yes. 2 days later, I pulled into Fort Harrison's main gate. Different guard this time, but the same crisp salute. Only now it was meant for me, the real Sergeant Walker. The transition center occupied an old motor pool building, retrofitted with classrooms and workshop spaces. Walking through those familiar doors felt like crossing some invisible line between my past and future. A few young recruits passed by, offering quick salutes that I returned automatically. The muscle memory was still there, but it felt different now. Less like a reflex and more like recognition. Mike met me in what used to be the tool room, now converted into a small office. He'd filled out since basic training, but that same eager energy radiated off him as he showed me around. We've got about 30 vets in the current rotation, he explained, gesturing to a classroom where someone was drawing electrical diagrams on a whiteboard. Most of them are combat specialists trying to find their footing in the civilian sector. They've got the skills. They just need help seeing how those translate. I nodded, remembering my own uncertainty during those first weeks back. And what exactly would you need from me? 2 days a week, working directly with the mechanics and engineers, teaching them how to think beyond military specs, how to adapt to civilian equipment and protocols. He grinned. Maybe even some of those famous Walker workarounds that kept our vehicles running in the sandbox. The pay he outlined wasn't anything spectacular. About a third of what that defense contractor had offered. But something about it felt right. This wasn't about chasing status or big paychecks. This was about building something authentic. Something earned. We walked the grounds after, passing the spot where Cody had played his impersonation game. But the memory didn't sting like before. If anything, it highlighted the difference between wearing a uniform and earning it. A group of young recruits passed us, fresh from PT by the look of them. They snapped to attention, saluting sharply. At ease, I said, returning the gesture. Their eyes held that mix of exhaustion and determination I remembered so well. These kids weren't looking for shortcuts or borrowed glory. They were putting in the work, just like I had. Mike showed me the workshop where I'd be teaching, a long room filled with engines in various states of disassembly. The smell of grease and metal shavings brought back a flood of memories. Long nights troubleshooting stubborn machinery, teaching nervous recruits how to trust their hands and instincts. So, what do you think? Mike asked, watching me run a hand along a partially rebuilt transmission. Ready to help shape the next generation? I looked around the space, already seeing possibilities. This wasn't some glamorous defense sector office or high-stakes consulting gig, but it was real. It was needed. And most importantly, it was built on my actual experience, not someone else's borrowed dreams. The sun was setting over Fort Harrison, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold that caught the brass buttons on my dress uniform. Funny how different everything looked from this angle, standing tall beneath Old Glory, instead of sleeping in my truck outside the gate. "Little more to your left, James," Timmons called out, adjusting his camera. "Want to catch that light just right." I shifted my stance, feeling the familiar weight of my ribbons and insignia. Each one earned, each one mine. The evening breeze snapped the flag above me, and for a moment I was transported back to countless other retreats, other ceremonies. The smell of fresh-cut grass and gunmetal always did that to me. "Perfect," Timmons said, checking his viewfinder. "This'll be one for the books." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably another news alert about Cody. They'd been coming steadily since yesterday, when the defense firm announced their fraud claim. The JAG office wasn't far behind, hitting him with charges that would stick to his record like tar. No more borrowed uniforms? No more stolen valor? "You see the morning paper?" Timmons asked, lowering his camera. "Your brother's mugshot made page 3. Below the fold, but still." I nodded. Mom called. Said he's having trouble even getting interviews now. Background checks keep flagging him. "Good," Timmons grunted. "Man wants to play soldier. He better be ready for the consequences." The bass loudspeaker crackled to life, announcing the evening retreat. We both snapped to attention automatically, years of training kicking in. As the first notes of the bugle call floated across the lawn, I thought about legacy, not just mine, but all the men and women who'd worn this uniform with honor. "You know what gets me?" I said, as the last note faded. He thought it was just clothes, just a name he could slip on and off like a costume. Timmons lowered his camera, his expression grave. "That's because he never earned it, never understood what it means to build something real." The setting sun caught my shadow, stretching it long across the manicured grass. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the cadence of troops running PT, their voices carrying clear in the evening air. Real soldiers, real service. "One more," Timmons said, raising his camera again. "For the Transition Center office." I squared my shoulders, facing the flag. Behind me, Fort Harrison's buildings stood solid and permanent. A reminder that some institutions couldn't be faked. Some honors had to be earned the hard way. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the JAG office, confirming they'd received my final statement for Cody's prosecution. The wheels of military justice turned slow but sure. He'd face the consequences, not just legally, but in every job application, every background check, every Google search of his name for years to come. But standing there in my pressed uniform, watching the colors fade from the sky, I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only peace, the kind that comes from knowing who you are and what you've built. "Got it," Timmons said, reviewing the shot. "Want to see?" I stepped over, looking at the small screen. There I was, silhouetted against the sunset-painted flag, every detail of my uniform crisp and correct. Not a borrowed costume or a stolen identity, but the real thing. Earned through sweat and service. "Send me that one," I said quietly. Timmons nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Will do. Ready to head in?" Got those new recruits waiting for their first mechanical systems overview. I took one last look at the flag above us, then straightened my jacket. Yeah, time to build something new. We walked toward the transition center, our footsteps echoing on the concrete. Through the windows, I could see my first group of students already gathering. Young faces eager to learn, to earn their own way forward. No shortcuts, no borrowed glory, just honest work and real legacy. The image of Cody in my uniform seemed distant now, like a bad dream fading in the morning light. He'd tried to steal a name, but names were just letters. Legacy? That had to be built hour by hour, choice by choice. You could polish brass that wasn't yours, wear ribbons you didn't earn, but the truth always showed through in the end. As I reached for the door handle, Timmons caught my arm. "Hey, James?" I turned. He gestured at the photo on his camera. "That's what a real soldier looks like." I nodded, letting his words settle. Then I straightened my shoulders and stepped inside, ready to help the next generation build their own legacies, the right way. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.